All right, it's my privilege to welcome our first keynote of the morning, Jerry Cuomo from IBM. Jerry is an innovator and a thought leader in the blockchain world. Jerry serves as IBM Fellow and Vice President of Blockchain Technology and is recognized as one of the most prolific contributors to IBM's blockchain software business. So if I could have Jerry coming up here for a second. So Jerry, how are you? Good. So before you start your keynote, we couldn't let you leave here today without a little surprise. So Jerry's not from Cleveland, he's not from Ohio, but he is a huge Baker Mayfield fan, right? All right. So I wanted to get. So when we were talking about his speech, he said there's one non-negotiable element. I said, oh, Jesus, we have a high-maintenance speaker, right? And I said, what is that? And he says, I want to wear a Baker Mayfield jacket, on a jersey on stage. So I have a guest with us today that's going to present you a jersey. Welcome, John Dorsey, General Manager of the Cleveland Browns.
Jeez. Good morning. Yeah. I'm like not quite here right now.
Welcome to Cleveland.
Oh, thank you so much.
You doing?
Yeah, good.
Well, I just wanted to, Baker couldn't be here today, but, like in situations when people like you come to cities, they usually hand out like the key to the city. This is my version of the key to the city for you right here. It's an autographed Baker Mayfield jersey,
geez.
sir.
Thank you so much.
There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Right,
thank
enjoy.
you. Oh, wow.
Stop by anytime.
Oh, will do. This is awesome. I got to wear this.
Okay. Outstanding. We wouldn't expect less now.
There you go. Let's give it up for the Cleveland Browns. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, John.
Yes.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks. All right. Wow. Yeah, just be careful what you wish for. Anyway, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Blockland. I'm Jerry Cuomo, and I'm going to talk to you today about our passion for blockchain at IBM and beyond. So, folks, I'm here to say this morning that blockchain is here. It's not going to be here. It not will be here. It is here. And it's here for good. And there's a double meaning when I say that. It's here for good. It's here to stay, for sure. But it's also here to serve social good. And I'm going to share some examples with you today that I hope inspire you on both those two double meaning, that it's actually making a difference today and it is actually doing something in my 30 years in IT that I've only seen very rare occasions that it's actually changing everyday life. And what we're talking about here is a new breed of blockchain, inspired very much by all the things we know and love about Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? However, this blockchain is built with business and government in mind. It's built from the ground up to follow the good rules of business. As I said, it's inspired by all that is good about the Ethereum and the Bitcoin blockchain. And if blockchain were a duck, maybe it would have feathers and waddle and quack. And there's different types of species of ducks, right? And I like to believe that there is 1,000 great applications of blockchain. Maybe there's 1,000 species of ducks out there. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is one of them. And like my kids, I try to love them all equally. But there is the other 999 applications that we're really excited about. So what you're going to be hearing in my conversation today about how this new breed of blockchain is serving business. And again, it is very much everything you know and love about blockchain. It's built on a shared, replicated, immutable ledger where, unlike a database where transactions are just instantly committed, set up by an administrator, with a blockchain, transactions are first proposed, consulted on through a consensus algorithm, and once agreed, it's then and only then that the transaction is committed. And it's committed in a way that cannot be changed. It's immutable. And that wonderful thing, that the fact that it's a team sport and that once agreed upon by the team, it is committed, that changes everything. That changes the game in a sense that now you have an audit log which brings a new trust to the table that really gets to the point of changing everyday life. So today I'd like to share a few examples with you about this new idea around blockchain for business. And I say it's new. It's been around since 2015, and I'll tell you that story in a second. But also what I want to share with you is some encouragement that here in Blockland, that we are all here to help you take your great idea to a live and active blockchain network. And I'm going to be bringing a guest on to tell his story about how he took his amazing idea and created true tickets from that. So I'll share some tips with how you can change everyday life with blockchain. So let me start with 3 examples. Now, how many of you had this experience before? Has this ever happened to you? You're traveling through the Cleveland airport, and you're rushing for your flight, and you're hungry. I'm always hungry. So you stop and grab one of these. That's a sandwich. Maybe it's a chicken sandwich. And let's say maybe an hour or so into the flight, you're not feeling so well. Yeah. How many of you have actually gotten sick from eating bad food? Yeah, I think it's all happened to all of us. In fact, in 2006, a nationwide outbreak of E. coli was linked to bagged spinach. And it took about 2 weeks for regulators to conduct the trace back to determine the source. And a lot of bad things happened in that time frame. People got sick, obviously. Spinach got a bad rap, no pun intended. In fact, it took spinach about 10 years to regain the confidence of the broader market. You know, every time people were looking at spinach in this period of time, so it took a bad rap, maybe because of one region or one farm that had an issue, you know, the waste that occurred, the sickness, et cetera, and we can do better than that. And ladies and gentlemen, my first example, I'm here to tell you that everyday life is now changing for the better. With the Food Trust Network, it's happening today. It's been convened by us in IBM with great leaders around the food industry, including Walmart, Tyson, Nestle, Kroger, McCormick, Dole, et cetera. And the purpose of the network is to really quickly pinpoint the sources of contaminated food to reduce the impact of food recalls and ultimately change everyday life, you know, limit the number of people who get sick or die from foodborne illnesses. And the way this works with blockchain is on the blockchain, the various participants in a supply chain of food from farm to fork track the food contents digitally on a blockchain ledger. So basically, the blockchain is used as a shared view across the supply chain. And in an example, well, for example, we can scan, let's say, the QR code of the chicken sandwich with a mobile app, and someday see all the ingredients where they came from. And like a software engineer, maybe if you're not feeling well, you can file a defect with that app against that chicken sandwich and say there's something was wrong with it. I want to file a Sev1 defect. At least that's what my stomach is saying. And what you might find out very quickly is that it wasn't the chicken. You were pinpointing it was the chicken, but maybe it was the lettuce because someone in Butte, Montana also filed a complaint against a Caesar salad, and it was really the lettuce, not the chicken. Right? So this is the art of the possible. In fact, I testified in Congress earlier this year with Frank Yanis from Walmart. And Frank shared with Congress that Walmart did an experiment with sliced mangoes in a particular Walmart store. They did a trace back from the store back to the farm where the mangoes came from. And in that base case, Frank said it took 7 days without blockchain to actually locate the food, the mangoes, back to the farm. And with blockchain, using the IBM blockchain platform, it took 2.2 seconds. Frank says that's food traceability at the speed of thought. The Congress folks actually clapped. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Really unified, bipartisan, and brought both sides of the aisle together clapping. And I think you'll agree that that's a great example of blockchain changing everyday life. I got two more quick examples. Have you ever had to fill out an application to rent an apartment? I think we all have. I just recently have gone through this process with my son. Seemingly, you're given a stack of paper that asks for every aspect of your life. You know, where you live, your name, your address, your mother's maiden name, the name of your first grade teacher, you know, et cetera, et cetera. The list seemingly goes on and on. And after you do that, you actually realize it wasn't just the apartment office, but over the course of the last couple months, I've actually had to give this information out to my bank, you know, to start my new data plan at my cell phone provider and at the local trip to the DMV. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but my digital life is a mess. I got stuff scattered all over there. I don't even know where it is. And then this happens. This has happened to all of us. In fact, I think about a year or so ago, I remember getting one of these that I really didn't like. Your data's breached. Oh God, we gotta stop this. But before I say this, I'm gonna say that this is very common and it's just getting worse. 15.4 million people in 2016 were hit with some kind of identity theft. So says Javelin Strategy and Research. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to say that the days of big data breaches are numbered. And this is something happening north of the border, and we are kind of moving this south of the border as well to the US. This is called a Verified Me network. It's convened by a company called SecureKey. Right? And it's an application that you can use that's backed by blockchain with a mobile front end where when you go to the apartment, you just put your thumb on the application, and that's all you need to verify that stack of questions. And let me tell you how this works. So one of the features of blockchain is this notion of using it to implement what I think about is almost a digital rights management system, but instead of a piece of music that you're licensing out to people, and it's your music and you're controlling it, the DRM codes directly yourself, now we're talking about your music is your life attributes, where you live, your age, your blood type, your last visit to the doctors. That becomes at your thumb. You are now controlling that information. We're not putting that information on a blockchain. That's a big misnomer. But we're using the blockchain as a proof and permissioning system. And with that, amazing things happen. No centralized databases. We call those honeypots, right? With a big bullseye on it saying, hack me. No tracing. Right? And this is really important. You know, you're sitting there maybe with your smart thermostat. Is it tracing you? Like, how do you know what data is yours and what data is shared? And maybe you clicked on the click-through agreement, but did you really read that? One of the things that the National Institute for Standards and Technology stipulated is that their nirvana for no data tracing is this notion of triple blind data exchange, right? And with the Verified Me identity network, it is one of the first major networks to support this seemingly long-haired concept. But it's pretty simple to understand. Triple blind data exchange means the real estate company that's requesting data does not know that the bank and the DMV and that your employer are all collaborating to provide the answers. They just trust, based on the system, that a tier 1 bank and a tier 1 government institution is providing that. But they don't know where you bank. Similarly, that's one blind. Double blind is the bank doesn't know that you're applying for an apartment, right? And it just has been told by you through your thumbprint permission that you're allowed to, I'm giving you permission, bank, to share my information, maybe that my credit rating is in good standing, with this group asking the question. And then the third is SecureKey and IBM that has helped mediating the network, doesn't know either, triple blind. That is a big deal, and that goes a very long way to eliminate digital tracking and tracing. A very important thing that we all have to think about in this digital age. And last but not least, no unnecessary information. You know, not that this happens to me anymore, but it certainly happens to my daughter. You go into a bar, and you have to show a government-issued ID to get in, to prove your age, right? But I don't want the bouncer, that's like too much information. I don't want the bouncer to know where my daughter lives, unless she wants the bouncer to know where she lives. Too much information. So with blockchain, we support zero-knowledge proof, which means we can take a document like a digital driver's license, keep it encrypted, always, give it to the participant or the challenger, like the bar, and have it levy assertions against it. Are they old enough based on state law to get in, yes or no? I don't need to know that they're a blood donor, or et cetera, right? So no centralized databases, no tracking, and no unnecessary information. This is a big deal, right? And this is really going very far to eliminate identity theft. Okay, one more example. Has this ever happened to you? And folks, this has happened to me. And let me explain it, because the picture is not, it could be mistaken. It's not me giving drugs to kids. I have a great person on our design team who really helps me out with these pictures. When I saw this one, I was explaining the story to him. This is how he depicted it. So my son participated in Taekwondo tournaments. And after a tournament, I was driving some of the kids and family home, and a couple of the kids had aches and pains. So they said, does anyone have aspirin? So I usually carry around in my bag a little jar of aspirin, and I offered it to the kids. And one of the kids was with their parents, and the parent actually looked at the aspirin before giving it to their child, and looked at it and said, Jerry, what's this you're giving my child? I said, it's an aspirin. They said, it doesn't look like any aspirin that I've ever seen. And then at that moment, I mean, my heart dropped to my feet. I'm like, well, what is it? And they're like, I don't know. You tell me what is it? And quickly I Googled it, and it was a generic, based on the numbers, it was a generic brand of Tylenol. And then I remembered just dumping some generics in there. But this is not just a problem happening to me. 1 in 10 medical products circulating in low and middle income countries is either substandard or falsified, says the World Health Organization. Things like cough syrup for children containing powerful opioids, or fake antimalarial medicine made with potatoes and cornstarch. But changing everyday life for the third time here. We've developed a technology, and it's not directly a blockchain technology, but it's a blockchain enhancement, something that is like peanut butter and chocolate. It goes really well together, and it's called the Crypto Anchor Verifier. It's a snap-on plastic lens to a smartphone with some AI software running as a smart app. And what you can do is you can take your phone, point it at an aspirin, and what it does is it creates a digital profile using light spectrum analysis. And at the pharmacy, or at the pharmaceutical company that's producing the aspirin, you can take a fingerprint, you can create a digital fingerprint of the legitimate pharmaceutical, and there's the light spectrum. You can create a digital hash of that and put it on the blockchain. And then maybe at a point of sale, you can do the same, and you can see that this has a different spectrum than the one that was committed to the chain. Something happened in the supply chain to change it. And that's a cartoon. This is real. This is an example from the lab. And we've improved the user interface greatly since this, but I think it shows you there's the real aspirin with one. You can see where the peak is. And there's the second one. And let's blow this up a little bit. So here's the two color distributions. And you can see the top one was the real one, and the bottom one, based on the spectral analysis, shows that there is a difference. Houston, we have a problem, right? And I think that's example number 3 of changing everyday life with blockchain. All right, so it's real, it's here. As I said, it's not coming. These things are happening every day. Real businesses are putting this to work. And ladies and gentlemen, all 3 of these examples have something in common. As I mentioned before, they require a new breed of blockchain. And that blockchain is a blockchain built, as I said, from the ground up for business. But that's just not a cute slogan, blockchain for business. There are 4 things that I really think about that after we initially in IBM embraced Ethereum, and actually after working with clients, we realized that it needed some enrichment in 4 areas. One was accountability, meaning in a world of HIPAA requirements for healthcare, GDPR, members of the network must be known. So we created, at the time, the world's first permission blockchain. There are others now, but at the time we, and I'll explain the story in a second, created permission blockchain where a certificate authority or decentralized certificate authority is used to issue cryptographic membership cards. Like when you go to the gym, before you enter the network, you show your membership card, right? That's number 1, that's accountability. Privacy, number 2. While you're known to the network, in many applications, it's important, and it's edicted by regulation, where you must be able to perform that transaction confidentially or privately, right? So we support the notion of channels, zero-knowledge proof, side databases, where you can exchange information, you can conduct transactions in a way that not everyone in the network gets to see what you're doing. So privacy, number 2. Number 3, the examples that you just saw, you can imagine the identity example, the food example, has an insatiable requirement for performance, right? So a blockchain for business must scale and support an immense volume of transactions. We recently did a study that we did a benchmark called FabCoin, which using our blockchain for business simulated a token exchange similar to what you would see in Ethereum and Bitcoin. And on that network, we were able to produce over 3,500 transactions per second, right? And that starts to reach the levels. Of course, your miles vary. Garbage in, garbage out. If you write good code that follows best practices, you'll get better results, et cetera. And last but not least, like the Energizer Bunny, the blockchain must continue to run. And a lot of folks say, well, isn't this just inherent in blockchain? I say, it's software. Software fails. So it's from time to time. Security, that is fault tolerant. And in a permission blockchain, perhaps it's not just bad actors, but maybe it's sloppy actors. Like I'm in a network, and one of the participants in my network is running on some old hardware that fails from time to time. That computer cannot bring down the network, right? So you have to keep ticking, even if you're taking a licking. So it's fault-tolerant security. That's the essence for blockchain for business. And this is not a hypothetical thing. It actually is embodied in a project, which is the Hyperledger project. Hyperledger project is a place where groups go to build open source blockchain technology for business. There's about 10 plus projects, software projects running under the banner, the umbrella of Hyperledger. One of them is Hyperledger Fabric, and we in IBM have been putting a lot of engineering and research resource on this because the world needs a dependable blockchain for business, for the 999 other applications out there. So our strategy is the IBM blockchain platform is powered by open source. It's powered by the Hyperledger technology, specifically the Fabric, but we also bring to bear some of the other technology in there. And it's differentiated through a set of value-added components on our platform. We've been doing a lot of work, not just with the 3 examples that I showed you. We've worked with over 600 customers where we've exchanged at least $1 to do a blockchain project. and probably even 1,000 plus where we've done some levels of consultancies. And working with a set of imaginative network founders, these are folks with, like Matt that you're going to see with the sparkle in their eye, a great idea. We've helped graduate over 100 networks to live status across a wide variety of use cases. So we're very pleased because this basic experience has an effect where it informs the platform and the technology. So the business applications are the head of the spear that drive requirements. And when we say a live network, it's not a POC. It has multiple members participating, adding blocks regularly, exchanging value daily. And here's a quick example of some of the 100 members, the graduating class here in 2018. And we're seeing trends across these applications and learning what it takes to take a great idea to a live network. And as I said, we've engaged hundreds of clients around the world with our IBM services group. You're going to hear from Jason Kelly, who runs the blockchain practice, services practice, and our blockchain garage. A garage is a concept that we have in IBM, like a garage where you go and create things, you innovate. So we have these garages around the world where we actually do design thinking workshops and pair programming. In the US, we have one in New York. We have one in San Francisco. We have Toronto. We have Singapore, London, Tokyo. So in the US, it's San Francisco and New York. Are we missing something? We're missing something in the middle, right? Yeah. I mean, after witnessing what I've witnessed here, what Bernie and team created, we'd be crazy not to strongly consider Blockland as our next location. And we are looking into that, and we're very excited about bringing one of our garages out here to the Midland. Heck, maybe I can spend a little time here watching some games too. But with that said, we've taken some of the practices and learnings, and we've created on our website the Founder's Handbook, which provides some guidelines or experience, best practices from what we've learned working with those companies. I'm going to share 3 of them quickly with you: scope, motivation, and governance. Scope is about dreaming big and acting incrementally. It's about knowing your North Star, knowing what your moonshot is, and how you're going to use the disruptive powers of blockchain, like the examples I showed you before. But it's also about having an Apollo program and not just trying to get to the moon in one shot. It's about incrementally getting there through a set of well-orchestrated MVPs, having a minimal viable product, knowing where to start, knowing who to start with. Decentralization is important in blockchain, but you don't have to start with everyone in your community to start. There's an MVP, minimal viable ecosystem. Many times we have a twinkle in our eye about replacing an existing system with a distributed ledger. We find in many cases that you don't have to rip and replace. You can set up a side ledger to enrich an existing set of B2B business processes. We call that a shadow ledger. So again, scope is important, dreaming big, acting incrementally. Motivation. The beautiful part about Bitcoin and Ethereum is the incentive system built in. Right? And in a blockchain for business, you must recreate the incentive for members to be part of the network. Right? And understanding how to incentivize is key. It's really about creating an economic, a two-way marketplace where there's buyers and there's sellers or data providers and data consumers, balancing your obligations, because sometimes being an institution in a blockchain network is like doing jury duty. You have to spend your time, refereeing the ledger for the sake of the group, but there has to be an incentive for you to sit there and do that, and that gets worked out during the process of actually defining your scope and ultimately the rules of the network governance. Now, again, blockchain is so simple. Like, Why is it effective? Why is it changing everyday life? It's on the simple premise that a group working together could achieve a better outcome than any single member of the group by themselves, right? So how does that group play nice, right? What are the rules such that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? So the best founders are like referees. They are able to bring the group together, working through work groups for business, legal, and technical work groups that define the rules of the network, right? That set the scope and the motivation ultimately. Right? But I can talk about this all day. I help many people build blockchain networks, but I am not personally a proprietor of one. I know IBM is a proprietor of a few, but I thought it would be more important to get someone out here to share with you their experience from that twinkle in their eye to an active network. So I'm going to call Matt on the stage from True Tickets, and Matt's going to tell you his story. Here you go, Matt. Welcome. Good to see you, my friend.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks. I like this
Jersey for you.
So good morning, everyone, and it's great to be back in Cleveland. So I've actually been to this great city before. I've had the opportunity to go to an Indians game as well as check out the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Very cool venue. If anyone hasn't seen it, you should go check it out. And I'm grateful for this conference to be back here, as well as I think it's great for this opportunity to showcase the great city of Cleveland. So as Jerry mentioned, I am the CEO and co-founder of True Tickets. We are a digital ticketing and analytics platform enabled by the IBM blockchain. And when Jerry asked me to come join him on stage today, I was excited for two reasons. One, as a startup, it's always great to come showcase your idea in front of a great public audience in a great forum like this. But two, it is my hope that the perspectives that I talk about today and how we approach ticketing and blockchain and our use case are helpful to those of you in the audience who are thinking about use cases in blockchain today. Oops, sorry, I'll go back. And a little bit about me. So in a past life, I flew helicopters for the United States Navy. I taught for a bit at Cornell. I spent some time at Deloitte as an M&A and strategy consultant. And most recently, before deciding to lead True Tickets full-time, I held a corporate innovation position at a company called Thales, a French aerospace and defense firm, where I looked at a bunch of different emerging technologies, and that's where I was introduced to blockchain. And I think when it comes to blockchain, we all have our kind of quintessential blockchain moment. When did blockchain become real to me? And it became real to me when I started at Thales almost 2 years ago to this day, and my boss turned to me and said, Matt, blockchain, go figure out what it means for Thales. And that was quite a daunting task at the time. And so obviously I immersed myself in the technology. I learned about it during my time at Thales. We looked at about 200 different use cases. And that's really what led me to the stage today. So then the next question is, why ticketing? And it helps to take a step back and think about, when we think about blockchain, what are some of the characteristics of an opportunity where blockchain could be well suited? And typically they involve three things. One, an asset. It helps if that asset is digital. It doesn't have to be, but it's a little bit more optimal if it is. Two, there's a set of actors, and there's some level of mistrust amongst them. It doesn't have to be completely trustless, but there's a level of mistrust amongst those actors. And then thirdly, there's the transaction of that asset between those actors. And you have to couple that with what Alex Tapscott talked about last night. There also needs to be friction in the transaction of that asset. And that friction can manifest itself in the form of cost, time, resources, data quality, et cetera. And when you think about it, that is essentially ticketing. And so we all know ticketing is broken. I think we all have ticketing stories. And why is it broken? Well, it's this landscape that's essentially littered with non-value add players. They're enabled by suboptimal technology. There's a lack of alternatives. There's a lack of financial incentive at present to compel them to change. And this actually harms all the content creators. So if I'm a venue, I don't know who's coming to my venue. I don't know how they got there, and I don't know how to get them back. If I'm an artist or a performer, I'm missing out on that data that helps me connect with my fans. I'm also missing out on the financial compensation of the secondary market. And if I'm the user, if I'm the fan, I'm missing out on just access to those experiences. In fact, you could argue that the industry is taking advantage of your desire to have those experiences. And so we know what's wrong with it, and I think it's epitomized by this diagram. And this is actually not what's wrong with ticketing. This is actually today what's best in class in ticketing. I had the fortune to be at a conference in Miami about a month ago where I sat down with an expert in the space, and we talked about a lot of things. And one of the things we talked about was, well, what does great look like in digital ticketing? And this is what nailed it, quote unquote, nailed it looks like in ticketing. And this is the implementation of one rule for a ticket, essentially the prevention of an unauthorized resale of a ticket. And if you look at it, it's 10 handoffs between 4 parties across one platform. This is inefficient, it's not scalable, and it's also not what the industry wants. When you talk to ticketing people in the industry, when you talk to people who leverage the Tessitoro platform, the Audience View platform, tickets.com, they don't want this complex API construct to implement one rule. They want a rule where they can implement multiple rules across multiple assets and then federate the asset across a platform easily in a scalable manner. And so what is the solution? The solution is a blockchain-enabled platform that essentially allows for that rule set to be combined with the asset and then federated across multiple parties. And it's done by essentially migrating that asset to blockchain. And so gone are the days of the clunky APIs, the inefficient handoffs, and the future is all about that efficient transaction where the asset lives on blockchain. It has a rule set coupled with it, and then you federate the access to multiple different parties such that the customer delivery experience doesn't change or isn't impacted. And that's what we're building at True Tickets. And so where are we today? We're a seed stage startup. We're in the middle of a fundraise right now. That fundraise is to help us go from concept to company and product to platform. And what did we do this past year? Well, we like to think we've proved the concept. We've demonstrated the efficacy and the viability of blockchain in ticketing by building an end-to-end solution. And we've actually done this on the production instance of the IBM blockchain. We've handled 20,000 in total top-line revenue. We've done over 1,000 transactions on blockchain. I would say that our scale is not limited because of the scale of the platform. It's been limited because of the scale of the opportunities we've had. When we look to the future, what we want to do is we want to be bigger. We want to be a platform that helps connect people with the experiences that they desire. And that means building out a white label application where our clients can use that. They can brand that however they would like. It also entails working with our partners on building third-party mobile and web applications where they can leverage and benefit from all the benefits that blockchain has to offer while not disrupting the current customer experience because that is valuable to them and they don't want to change that. So with that, I'll bring Jerry back up here. Follow me on Twitter, but I think we have a couple questions.
Thank you. It's a good story. I mean, we all buy tickets, so this is another everyday life experience. So, I have kind of a little bit of a self-centered question to ask you, but it actually, based on our relationship, you are a founder. Your application really has been exercising the IBM blockchain platform and all of its underpinning. So why did you pick Hyperledger Fabric as your blockchain foundation, and why did you pick IBM blockchain as your implementation?
Yeah, and I think the flip side of that question is why didn't you pick a public or a cryptocurrency? And I think that's fair. And it really boils down to understanding the ticketing use case and I think some of the unique characteristics around ticketing. And when we think of blockchain more broadly, and I'm a big fan of blockchain technology, as well as crypto. I mean, I own crypto. And when we think about if blockchain is going to be impactful in society, I think blockchain solutions need to have 3 things. They need to be scalable, they need to be secure, and they need to be decentralized. And even no offense to IBM or Hyperledger or the cryptocurrency chains, there's no protocol that does all 3. If you look at the public solutions, they provide security and they provide decentralization. They're working on scale. If you look at IBM and Hyperledger, they provide scale and they provide security. And I know you're working on decentralization. I'm encouraged by the remote peer nodes that you can now put on AWS as well as Azure. And so when we looked at it from ticketing, specifically with our use case, there were 3 reasons why we said, let's build on the IBM platform. And we did look at the Ethereum platform as well. First and foremost, it's scale. Some situations you don't need scale, you can wait for scale. In ticketing, if you want to be impactful in ticketing today, you need scale. You need to be able to do over 1,000 transactions per second. And that's just not doable on some of the other platforms. The second one, it really boils down to kind of one of the main benefits of a public solution is that they really solve for the integrity of the asset being brought on chain, which is important in Bitcoin. I'm never worried about an invalid Bitcoin or a fraudulent Bitcoin being mined and brought on chain, and that would destroy the economics of that blockchain. However, in ticketing, whether you're on a public solution or a solution like IBM, like we are, you're not able to eliminate that risk. You always have to have some semblance of trust of the asset coming on chain. So kind of one of the big benefits of the public solution where you get kind of that integrity of the asset coming on chain, but you have to lose out on scale. You don't get that in ticketing. And third, in talking to enterprise partners, you talked about it with business to business. In talking with those big enterprise partners, they're comforted with this solution being on enterprise cloud. They're comfortable with knowing that IBM supports the solution and they'll be there to kind of help if there's an issue. And I'd say those are kind of the three reasons why we selected it. And I think it makes sense for our use case.
Okay. Thank you very much, Matt. Your check is on the back table back there. So I really appreciate all the kind words. Yeah, thanks, Matt. No, True Tickets, just meeting Matt for the very first time with that twinkle in his eye and now seeing them putting up blocks on the chain is very impressive. That idea is coming to life, and it's very impressive. And one of the things that I want to end with is a quick, I would call it a demo, but maybe some inspirational screenshots of the IBM blockchain platform. One of the things I've learned early on is for technology to be successful, it just has to be a de facto standard, especially in this day of Linux, that it's important to establish standards. And the critical part about the IBM blockchain platform, working with Hyperledger and Hyperledger Fabric, IBM blockchain platform is now one of about 7 vendors that provide Hyperledger Fabric-based offerings. So you can go to Amazon, they announced last week, Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, Alibaba, they're all offering Hyperledger Fabric-based solutions. While part of me, the person who's trying to help establish an open standard is thrilled about that, the IBM part of me said, okay, we have to show value and differentiate, but we can't do it in a way that locks customers in. One of the important things about jumping in the blockchain pool is you have to know you have freedom of action, that you can take your wares from one vendor to another. And we recently announced on the IBM blockchain platform that we have a multi-cloud strategy. And I think, certainly influenced by our recent announcement of Red Hat, that, running on the IBM cloud, of course, but running on any cloud is a key thing. So we're listening to the Mets of the world about the importance of that. But with that said, we are differentiating our blockchain solution, where, again, the goal is to take your idea and get it to a live business network. And we have about 3 or 4 steps that our platform allows you to do. First is develop. So we've introduced a set of value-added development tools. If you're a developer out there and you're familiar with VS Code, we have a VS Code extension that speaks Hyperledger Fabric that is accessible through the IBM blockchain platform. It provides all of the things that you know and love to build, model, and code a blockchain network. Everything from syntax assist and all the things developers need to be productive. So the blockchain platform provides a set of development capabilities. We have very attractive on-ramps. We have something called a starter network. You can guess what that's for. It's for getting started. We offer $500 in free credits to jumpstart you to get building your blockchain network. We also can graduate you to Enterprise, which has more production qualities, and Enterprise Plus, which has even more. So developing, again, you have a set of samples where you can click and start building your network based on a template, and in a matter of a day, you can have your sample blockchain network up and running. So developing is part number 1. Part number 2 is governing. Again, blockchain is a team sport. When you think about security issues and smart contracts, how do you know, like you shouldn't trust one member, you shouldn't necessarily have to trust one member of your network to deploy a new smart contract. I mean, if it's a food network and I join that network, the smart contracts are autonomously executing code, right? So once you join, if you haven't reviewed all of your contractual obligations, you may wake up the next morning finding that you're a proud owner of 100,000 watermelons. I didn't want 100,000 watermelons. Well, you didn't read the smart contracts associated with it. So being able to govern the distribution of smart contracts, we support signature voting, where the members of the network get to go through a review process where they can review the smart contracts. And when a policy is hit, let's say the majority have reviewed and come back and said this smart contract is okay, then it gets deployed, right? Similarly, inviting members, again, no one company should be allowed to a priori invite another company in. You can set policies that allow for a dictator if you want to say, yes, I will dictate that, or you can decentralize and say, no, we have to take it up to a vote, and a new member can't get in unless others agree. So we have a set of these governance tools that work on top of Hyperledger for setting policies that define how to do distributed network management or decentralized network management. And once it's up and running, as I said, blockchain is software. And enterprise software is enterprise software. You have to back it up. You have to make sure you have multiple nodes running for high availability. And yes, from time to time, there is a version upgrade. And earlier this year, I got to watch something that from an IT guy was kind of beautiful, is watching a network go from version 1 of Hyperledger Fabric to version 1.1. And being able to do that rolling upgrade without pausing the network. So the network is still taking transactions, and we can actually do across the various decentralized peers, we can start rolling out a new update. Now, blockchain is not, technology is not magic. Everything you've worried about for the last 20 years of IT is still things that you have to do, and operating as a collective is something we've been spending a lot of time focusing on. And then growing your network. You know, the Industrial Revolution was really, you know, the unsung hero in the Industrial Revolution was the Yellow Pages. Really, it introduced businesses to businesses, it introduced people to businesses. And we have this dichotomy in blockchain of public and private blockchain. I don't really see it that way. I see permission and permissionless. I think a permission blockchain could be a public blockchain, but except how would you know it exists? So we need the Yellow Pages for blockchain. And a company called Hasera has recently launched the Unbounded Registry, which I lovingly call the Yellow Pages for blockchain. It supports, it's a registrar for all the major blockchain technologies out there, including Hyperledger-based technologies, including Fabric and Sawtooth. It supports R3 Corda-based applications, Ethereum, Quorum-based applications, et cetera, Stellar, Sovereign. So it's a place to go to learn about these live networks and inquire about what the rules are for joining, getting APIs to connect to them, et cetera. So the blockchain industrial revolution is now off because we have our Yellow Pages. Anyway, with that, I have a couple minutes for questions, but I want to encourage you that blockchain is here, and it's here for good. It's here to stay, and it's also because a group could produce more than any single institution. Like, you could not stop the recent romaine lettuce problem with one farm, or even a big company like Walmart, right? You need a group of companies working together to get that full visibility of supply chain, right? So think about your ecosystem. Think about how blockchain can change everyday life for your partnerships that you have from business to business, or for your end users. So it's here. We'd love to help you get that started with IBM through Garage. And you're going to hear Jason talk later about our services group. We have our IBM blockchain platform, and of course, the blockchain for business, Hyperledger Fabric. The Founder's Handbook is out there on our website, and we encourage you to collect your $500 in cloud credits to kick the tires of the IBM blockchain platform. So with that said, I'm Jerry Cuomo. It's been my pleasure to speak to you this morning and become an adjunct member of the Cleveland family. So I have a couple minutes for questions, and I see questions coming up on the board here that have come in. One is, what is your idea around developing talent in blockchain? And I do think this is a profound question. I was talking to Mike, if Mike is here, from KeyBank yesterday, and we were musing about 10 years from now, is the talent going to look back and say things like, do you really think there were centralized databases? Do you really think the world operated in silos? And that would be a wonderful nirvana future. But you think about it, when the internet came, it was a fundamental shift in thinking about your channel to your customers and your channel to your other business partners. So it was a new type of clay that you got to mold your business. So talent for blockchain, first and foremost, is a business thought. So getting into the MBA programs to think about how bringing a group together to accomplish more than a single institution can accomplish by themselves is critical. So, and the work that we just heard about 1,000, this goal, setting wonderful goals like 1,000 blockchain engineers coming to Cleveland, that's a big deal. Having that locus of talent and having the various people involved, like the Bernies of the world, encouraging that behavior is really important. But like any new tool, a new way of thinking, blockchain is a two-sided coin. It's absolutely about the business model and how to enrich the business model, but it's also about, how do you take technology like distributed computing, cryptography, and how do you bring it all together to get that business outcome. I also believe blockchain is the nexus of all the interesting technologies. It is really the glue that will bring trust, the needed element of trust to AI. Think about it, every AI system out there is centralized. You have, what was it from the Terminator, Skynet? You have these centralized views, right? So I think bringing decentralization to AI, where you can gain trust in data, that's something that we're looking at around IBM. IoT is another example. So all of these things that our business and engineers are learning about at the university, adding a little blockchain to that, I think could really transform that thinking. So it's important to bring talent around blockchain now. I think these inspirational stories will help people want to be part of the blockchain movement. So next question is, when do you expect blockchain to explode and be used with most aspects of life? Well, I think it's, as I said, I'm maybe not like everyone. I don't know how many people of you agree to me, but I'm fortunate to be in a position where I'm starting to see the trailblazers hit a finish line, not the finish line. So they have their North Star. They are now implementing their Apollo program, and now they're on Apollo 4 and 5. So we're seeing progress being made, and the progress is happening out live. Right? It's actually happening in networks that we could all see and touch. So I think that's really encouraging. But I do think, like any new technology, it's going to take a number of years. I suspect this year is the year that I've seen a few POCs. Last year was the year of the POCs. This is the year that I'm seeing some of those POCs become live networks. And perhaps maybe next year is the year of the blockchain network mashup, where that institutions will be, having multiple feet and being participants in multiple networks simultaneously, right? And I think, you can take your participation in a food network and a trade finance network and start doing payments for the food cross-border, et cetera. And I think these are the types of things that we expect to see and enrich, and now we'll have a web of networks. And I don't want to say blockchain is going to replace the internet. I think that's silly. I think the blockchain needs the internet to run, but I think it can do wonderful things on top of it. How do I learn more about IBM blockchain and Hyperledger? Very simple. Go to ibm.com/blockchain, That'll get you there. Everything you need to know, including links to hyperledger.org. That's easy enough to remember as well. How can local governments prepare to use blockchain in the services they provide? I'm just talking to Bernie and listening about some of the work that he's doing around title registration. I just think that's brilliant. I think there's everyday life exercises. If you bought a car, why do you have to wait a couple days for the title to go through? Why do I need to keep buying title insurance every time I buy a house or get a mortgage? There's everyday life activities that in 2018, 2019 should be eradicated. It's just completely inconvenient, completely nonsensical stuff. All the paper that still exists in things you see in day-to-day life, but things that you don't see in pharma, all of the clinical trials, how non-digital these things are, participation in with the FDA, how these you would think in 2018 things would be far more advanced, but blockchain could really go far in bringing everyday interactions with state and government. And I think Bernie really gets this and is driving this. A couple Sundays ago, Baker, I would assume, maybe that's Baker Mayfield, said he was feeling pretty dangerous and won. Blockchain can be dangerous in a good way, but what wouldn't you do? What's dangerous? It's a good question. Blockchain is obviously not a nirvana. It is completely hyped in many, many areas and ways. So from that perspective, thinking it is the cure-all is dangerous. But what's equally dangerous is to dismiss it. I hear very disturbing conversations. We love tension in the system, to be honest. We love to post Ethereum up with Hyperledger. The fact of the matter is that we just co-joined each other's organizations. We're looking to do more collaborations than not collaborate. The most dangerous thing you can do is not participate, because the answer is out there and the answer is not in its final form as we speak. And the only way it's going to get to its final form is for us to participate. I've become somewhat of, in my own mind, a blockchain connoisseur, and I've really had to temper down my tastes. Because people always come to me and say, is this a good idea, Jerry, for blockchain? And my answer is yes. And they're like, wait, we didn't even tell you what it does. But the fact of the matter is what's dangerous is to watch. Because you got to be in it to win it. And if you're just watching, you won't build a muscle memory. You can't get fit by reading fitness books, right? And even a silly blockchain idea could pivot a couple times into the world's Facebook of blockchain. So I do think that is what's dangerous. It's trying to pit communities against each other, like public versus private, this and that. They're all good. They all serve a purpose. Find your purpose and explore it. And that's how you avoid danger. If IBM came to Cleveland, how many and what sorts of jobs would be available? Well, we do have IBMers in Cleveland. Kathy, one of my close colleagues here, is actually here from Cleveland. So we do have a local team in town. But I will tell you that everything that I'm seeing right here is really inspiration. And this is no BS. I traveled the world. I was recently with Alex, coincidentally more than not, in Korea, in Dubai, where the government of Dubai is really inspiring the local business community to do more with blockchain and subsidizing, et cetera. Of course, there's Consensus Conference in New York. To be honest, it was a bit of a zoo. I mean, I say that I'm a New Yorker. I grew up in New York and everything. What you've all done here is amazing. It really is. It's an encouragement. And I think everyone who's going to walk away when they sit back and think about what's happening was a delightful experience. It really was a delightful experience. So I'm certainly going to take that back to my leaders at IBM and share everything from the conversations we had with the local banks, some of the local government projects. So you guys got it going on. I really do think something special is happening here with respect to recognizing blockchain as a game changer and kind of rallying the town here to do that. So IBM's paying attention to that, and we will act. We liked acting on good things. What is the quickest way universities can help fill the skills gap? I think from a university perspective, I had a couple students coming to work as an interns at IBM 2 summers ago, and I explained the concept of blockchain for business. And it was as if, I was, replacing their McDonald's breakfast with oatmeal. And they were like, wait, Mr. Cuomo, this is not blockchain. We thought we were going to be mining for Bitcoin this summer. And, I realized that, any curiosity is the route to education. So, make sure that, first advice is that, embrace some of the things going on. I mean, Stellar has an interesting platform for creating tokens. I do believe the token economy, especially for an MBA student or an economics student, thinking about incentive systems, loyalty points programs, inspiring that could be inspired by the token economy that's happening there. So I guess know what drives interest for your students first and foremost, and don't do a pivot. Don't try to, they can't be tricked, so don't even bother. But the other thing is all of the muscle memory from a computer science perspective that we learn in school. Blockchain is typically 20% of a project. The other 80% is all of the things that it doesn't throw everything out. So you need a strong foundation across all the basics, right? And there's a little specialty that blockchain brings. But any developer, any computer science student or IT major can learn blockchain. It's much easier to learn once you learn the basics. I am out of time now officially. So one more time, I'd like to thank you. I like Bernie with that great surprise. And, keep it going, Blockland. We're all proud of you. We're proud to be part of this.